Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most important geopolitical stories happening right now, the relationship between Russia and China. What's really pulling these two giants together? And more importantly, what does it mean for the rest of us? Let's get into it. Just look at this image, a Russian flag flying right in the heart of Beijing. This isn't just a photo op. It's a powerful, very deliberate symbol of two global powers getting closer, creating an axis that is openly challenging the West. It's a statement. And here's the statement that really made everyone sit up and pay attention. Just 3 weeks before the invasion of Ukraine, Putin and Xi announced a friendship with no limits. An incredibly bold claim that basically set the stage for everything that's happened since. So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at what this limitless friendship is all about. Then we'll dig into the economic lifeline, their military and digital link-up, and their big plan for a new world order. And finally, we'll ask the big question, are there actually any limits to this partnership? Okay, so first things first, what's the core motivation here? Well, it's a shared idea, a belief that the world order, the one led by the United States, needs a major overhaul. That's the ideological glue holding them together. I mean, just listen to the words here. When Xi tells Putin they are together promoting these changes, he's not just talking about reacting to events. No, this is a proactive mission. It's a long-term project to fundamentally reshape global power in their image. All right, let's move from the big ideas to the cold, hard cash, because the economic pillar of this relationship is absolutely massive. Especially since 2022, China has become nothing short of an economic lifeline for a sanctioned Russia. And the scale of this lifeline is just staggering. Trade between them didn't just grow, it exploded. It jumped to a record $190 billion in 2022. And then they blew past that a year later, hitting $240 billion. This is the hard data that shows just how essential China is now for Russia's economic survival. So you might be asking, where's all that money coming from? Well, a huge chunk of it is energy. As Europe turned off the taps, Russia just rerouted its most crucial exports. We're talking oil, gas, and coal, straight to China. The value of those sales went through the roof, making China by far the biggest buyer of Russian energy. And this isn't a one-way street either. Let's take something simple, cars. When Western brands like Volkswagen pulled out of Russia, who filled the void? Chinese automakers. They flooded the market, and now Russian roads are almost completely dominated by brands like Chery and Geely. This whole economic shift is so dramatic that people are calling it the yuanization of Russia's economy. Think about this. Before the war, the Chinese yuan was barely even a blip in Russia's currency market, just 1%. By the end of 2022, it had rocketed up to 48%, overtaking the dollar. That's a massive pivot away from the global financial system as we know it. Okay, so beyond the money, there's a second critical piece to this puzzle, their alignment on security. And this covers everything from joint military drills in the Pacific to a really controversial shared vision for how the internet should work. And this partnership is very real. They're holding annual naval exercises, flying joint bomber patrols, and China is still a major customer for Russian weapons. But here's a crucial point. Chinese companies are also shipping what are called dual-use goods, things like microchips and drone parts. They're not technically weapons, but they are absolutely essential for Russia's war effort. Their cooperation also extends deep into the digital world, and it's all built around this one key idea, cyber sovereignty. It's basically the belief that a country's borders should also apply online, giving the government the right to control everything that happens in its corner of the internet. And this puts them on a direct collision course with the Western idea of a single global open internet. For Moscow and Beijing, the name of the game is control, preventing outside influence. For the US and its allies, it's all about the free flow of information. These are two totally opposite visions for our digital future. So, you've got shared economic interests and aligned security goals. What's the third major project? It's building an entirely alternative global system, one that can operate outside of Western-led institutions like the World Bank or the UN. So how are they doing it? Well, it's a kind of three-step plan. First, they're beefing up non-Western clubs, like BRICS and the SCO. Second, they're pushing for more trade in their own currencies to chip away at the power of the US dollar. And third, they're building their own financial pipes and plumbing so they have an alternative system that's safe from Western sanctions. You know, they have this fascinating way of describing their relationship themselves. They say they are not allies, but better than allies. It's a clever phrase that suggests a really deep partnership, but also hints that there might be some daylight between them, which gets really interesting. And that brings us to our final and maybe most important question. Is this really a limitless friendship, or is it something else? Maybe an alliance of convenience between two very unequal partners? So after everything we've looked at, the booming trade, the joint military drills, this shared vision for the world, we have to ask the question directly. Is this really a partnership of equals? Well, the analysis is pointing to a pretty clear answer. The emerging reality is that Russia, which for decades was the senior power in this relationship, is very quickly becoming the junior partner. The whole dynamic has flipped on its head. And the evidence is right there if you look. Russia is now selling its energy to China at a discount because it has to. Even the BRICS Bank, which they helped start, froze dealings with Russia to avoid sanctions. And maybe most telling, while Beijing sends economic support, it has been very careful not to send actual weapons. Russia is becoming incredibly dependent, and that totally changes the power balance. And why does that matter? Because a nuclear-armed power becoming this reliant on another creates huge risks for global stability. So what we're left with is less of a true union and more of a pragmatic marriage of convenience. The main thing holding it all together isn't some deep mutual trust, it's a shared strategic opposition to the United States. And look, this isn't just speculation. This understanding of the power dynamic comes from really detailed expert analysis from places like the Stockholm Center for Eastern European Studies, which are tracking the realities behind the headlines. And so that leaves us with one final thought. They call it a friendship without limits. But as Russia's dependence on China gets deeper and deeper, you have to wonder, who really holds the power in this relationship? And what happens when their interests don't perfectly align anymore?